I like to think about how long it took GitHub to make money on me. Like, I would love you to create your Val Town account when you're 14 years old. And like, for the first dollar we get from you to be when you're like 27, when you start your company. Like, that's the kind of company I think Val Town is. And I'm happy with that.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to Scaling Dev Tools. I'm joined today by Steve Krouse, who is the founder of Val Town. And Val Town has a poem on their homepage that says, "If GitHub gists could run and AWS Lambda were fun." Steve, great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, really great to be here.
Could you tell us a little bit about Val Town beyond the poem?
Yeah. Well, I guess from the medium is the metaphor perspective. The poem will tell you about me, that I really love metaphors and analogies. I made a list yesterday. I can try and do it from memory. So yeah, Val Town is like GitHub Gists if they ran. There's a run button on Vals. It's like AWS Lambda, but much more fun. It's like Twitter meets NPM in that it's social, but like sharing code. So like one tagline I like to say is that Val Town makes it as easy to import someone's code or your own code as it would be to tag someone on Twitter. You just like at stevekrause.foo, and then whatever the value of foo is, it's now just in your code. What are some other good analogies? I like to think of it as a spreadsheet, kind of like for JavaScript, or like a Jupyter notebook for JavaScript, or CodePen for the back end. So anyways, enough analogies. Val Town, in plain English, is a social website where you can write and run JavaScript or TypeScript. We run the code on our servers. We show you the results. Your code is instantly deployed and hittable via API endpoints. You can also schedule it with one click to run on intervals. There's logging, tracing. Console.email is one of our favorite features. So you can email yourself as easily as you'd log to the console. And yeah, many more.
I think last time we spoke, I told you that the most fun I'd had coding in the last recent memory was when I wrote this really silly script to book badminton courts for myself and my friends. And I feel like, it can be so fun, but in the day-to-day job, you get, a lot of stuff. You're fixing bugs, making sure stuff doesn't break. And it seems like Val Town is making it so that you can just go and create cool stuff without having to go through the pain of if you wanted to send an email, then you've got to go and set up your, it's a hassle, right? Every time SendGrid or something like that, it's still going to take you a solid half an hour at best of, boring work.
Totally. Yeah. We want to knock down all of those friction points as much as possible. So I guess one analogy I forgot that kind of points to the job to book courts, I feel, is Zapier. Zapier for developers is another kind of tagline that I've seen other people that you've interviewed on this podcast have tried to claim. I think there's definitely something there where programmers want to write code, but they want some of the niceties and guardrails of something like Zapier. And there are a number of us competing for that market. Yeah.
Well, I guess this is kind of an interesting segue to I've seen you've had quite a lot of success with marketing, in terms of Hacker News stuff, projects that have gone pretty well. And I saw one that you did was the Hacker News authors, where you could that did well, right? I feel like
yeah. So you could follow Hacker News Follow is kind of how we pitched it. It's a synthetic way via polling, via the API, to follow people on Hacker News, because you can't actually follow people on Hacker News. But you could do the same for a Hacker News topic. Basically, everyone in our space. So I'm alluding to Windmill, the last interview you had in the podcast. They also have a Zapier for developers kind of pitch, and one of their examples right on their homepage is also a Hacker News mention spot. And if you get a mention, it'll post your company Slack. We have the same kind of example integration. So yeah, that's a popular one. We recently made a list of some of our favorite use cases and categorize them on the website, because that's one of the huge challenges of a a really horizontal platform like Val Town is explaining to people what it is, what it can be used for, because it can be used for anything. It's like if you're trying to explain what a spreadsheet is to someone for the first time, you're like, it's like anytime you need numbers in a grid, they're like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So, but ultimately that's where the power, if you can pull it off, But
so how have you tried to like artificially like hone it down and go after certain people, or are you just like
more in the early days? I was doing some. I don't know. We're doing like a lot of different activities. We don't have. Yeah, so like we have this new website called like What Can I Make with Val Town, like valtown.com/ or val.town/use cases, I think is the URL. And it lists like a dozen or a couple dozen use cases that we think are cool. I guess eventually we'll need to do the thing that a lot of websites do, where they kind of ask you who you are, and then depending on your like user profile, to show you different integrations that like might appeal to you. Ultimately, we don't want you hearing about Val Town and for the first time and like landing on our website and being like, what is this? Like ideally, you're hearing about Val Town through someone else's Val. So I guess this is core to our strategy that hasn't really panned out yet, but I would like to pan out. Like this is my main focus, is I would like Vals to be shared across the web on the front page of Hacker News and Reddit and all the places. You would see a GitHub repo, I want a Val link, which is going to be really hard to pull off. And I think for those of us who me, before I started this company, I didn't realize what a coup GitHub had pulled off by making GitHub repos into a web primitive that every programmer understands. You land on a GitHub repo, you know what it is, you know that it's forkable, you know to scroll down to the README, there's like all this metadata, stats, you can star it, you look to the stars, see how many stars there are. It's like a GitHub repo is a web primitive in the way that a tweet is a web primitive, in the way that an RSS feed is a web primitive. And like thinking about all the ways that GitHub made it a web primitive, like remember the banner like 10 years ago, like fork me on GitHub, or, pull request on GitHub. I think it was fork me on GitHub banner. And then like even GitHub pages, like GitHub never wanted to be in the business of static website hosting. Like they never wanted to be in the GitHub pages. Websites were only to like show off your GitHub repo. Like that's what it was about in the beginning. Like people like abused the GitHub pages and like made them like a poor man's Vercel before like Vercel kind of like, and Netlify kind of capitalized on that. So anyways, we're spending a lot of time investing into making Vals also rich web primitives that are worthy of being shared, just bare links to a Val. Like we just added READMEs to Vals, like GitHub repos have READMEs. You can like a Val. We're getting there, but it's still not taking off. But anyways, to your point about like, how do we show people what Val is useful for? Ideally, you're showing off a snippet of JavaScript or TypeScript or like a forkable script. And that's how you learn about Val Town. You learn about it implicitly when you're learning about someone's specific Val.
Yeah. And then I guess it's like when someone goes to create a piece of code, they're like, you're in their mind as like the easiest way, because we're all kind of lazy. I feel like we just want to do the things that is going to be easy, because we've got this cool idea. We just want to make it happen fast a lot of the time, I feel like.
Yeah. To me, the keyword is default. Like Val Town needs to be the default place you go to code, in the same way that Twitter is the default place you go when you have like, this is a thought that like my audience would like. And you just pull open Twitter wherever you are. Like Val Town, you just pull it open. You're on the train. Well, I guess as long as the train's above ground, you pull up Val Town and you're just coding away on your phone, and you can build the whole thing. And like also the default place you go to find examples of things that have already been done. So like you're like, I want to play with the Tana API. You just go to Val Town, search for Tana, and you find like 17 examples. And you're like, that's close to what I want. Copy and paste, and you're off to the races. Like, but part of the magic of Val Town is that Vals all like share a runtime, and so there's no like installing the language, getting the version right, making sure the packages work. Like you really only have to think about the code, because if it worked for someone else, it's gonna work for you.
Yeah, sounds difficult to do on your side, I guess. But
Our solution is just, it's very restricted. Like it's only like the one version, everyone gets the same version of TypeScript.
Yeah.
And so there's no conflicts. Like if there are conflicts, everyone suffers from them. Like if we upgrade TypeScript and it like breaks some code from before, then it breaks for everybody, which maybe one day we'll have a more nuanced approach to it. And like, there'll be different versions of the Val Town runtime that you can like explicitly pin. We'd like to avoid that as long as possible, but it might become inevitable one day.
Because you see it as like a social network, almost, you said, right? Like,
yeah.
And so that is so important to have it like that you can play around with. Yeah.
One of the core principles of Val Town is composability. So like, this is the reason why vals are small snippets, like tweets are small snippets, because like the reason, to take a step back, like why are tweets limited in character lanes? Like when you make a tweet thread, you make like a series of tweets. I think the reason is so that each individual piece is likable individually, reply toable individually ad infinitum, and then retweetable individually ad infinitum in every direction. And so like, you could imagine this at the word level or the character level, but ultimately at the tweet level is kind of the right semantic abstraction. It's like kind of like a sentence, kind of like a paragraph. And you can break it up however you want, whatever you think is like the atomic unit of your thought. I think that's perfect for Twitter, and the same for Val Town. And the Val Town style is like small functions that you compose into larger functions. And so then you can reuse all of your little functions, and so can everyone else in the world if you make them public. And so like we all benefit from composability. And in theory, like less code needs to be rewritten because you can just import someone else's thing, and they don't have to go through the like the extra lift of like publishing to NPM and like dealing with all that nonsense. They wrote it, they're using it, they hit a button, it's public. Now other people are using it. And so the composability, so like that composability is really enabled by everyone sharing a runtime. That really helps that story. If like everyone's code was pinned to a different runtime and we had to like run your code and then be like, oh, now you want to run some code in a different runtime, let's spin up that runtime. Everything becomes slower and more of a headache. So that's part of why it's important that everyone share the same runtime for composability.
Yeah, that's an exciting feature. And actually, like I'm just kind of jumping back almost to when you said about like GitHub and just kind of become this kind of like mass adoption. I don't know if we said this on air actually, but I feel like we've discussed it anyway. But to get Val Town to be so big, I feel like it's like really hard, right? Like there's not many GitHubs, there's not many.
Like you were saying, it's just GitHub and Replit. Like what other developer tool? Yeah. Maybe Code Sandbox now has like millions of users. Like what developer tool has millions of users? Maybe Hacker News. I don't know.
Yeah, there's not many. And so I kind of wondered like how you're thinking about this, because I guess you've got to not just like do well, you've got to do like astonishingly well. Like so I wonder like how your approach is going to be and how you see that happening.
Yeah. So I guess it's a balance of like the do things that don't scale, but like always keeping an eye on scalability. So like that's one thing that my investor like is always advising. He's like watching me really go above and beyond with customer service for like even non-paying users in the Discord constantly or on Twitter, wherever. And then he's like, okay, great. But like, how do we move this from Discord into the product? How do we move this from you doing it on the product to like other Val Town users doing it to other Val Town users on the product? Like we want, so like people will come on Discord and they'll share a cool Val. Great. But like, how do we get people sharing Vals on Val Town? How do we make cool Vals rise to the top on Val Town? That's like one question. Then now I want to like comment on that Val. So I can comment on Discord, or another common pattern is I'll want to give feedback. And so it's like too annoying to like give feedback in writing. So I'll fork their Val, make the changes I want, and then send them a link to my forked Val, which is great. But like that belongs in a comment on the platform. And then the platform, and maybe there's like a way to denote, or maybe there's like a structured way to say like, this is a pull request. It's like a fork and a pull request. And then like they can hit a button to accept the changes. And then I can be credited somewhere for like my contribution, you know? So in some ways I am trying to like rebuild much of GitHub into Val Town. So like, you know, you want to like, and maybe I'll start with comments. Like you want to submit an issue, submit a pull request, submit a comment. I think maybe in the beginning they'll all be comments, but one day you could imagine like a Val having separate issues, separate pull requests, separate branches. Anyways, that's kind of further down the line. But so back to your question about like how am I thinking about achieving like huge scale? So ultimately, what I think needs to happen is Vals need to go viral the way GitHub repos go viral, and then they need to infect other people with a love of Val Town. Like they need to ambiently, and so this is like viral, like word of mouth, but like virality in like the truest sense. Like people hear about Val Town because other people are using Val Town, and then you sign up for Val Town, you get into it, you make cool Vals. Those you end up on the front page of Hacker News, which infect other people, and then the graph really does look like 5% every week, because the more people who sign up, the more people who sign up, because, you know, people keep making Vals, which get other people to make cool Vals. That's the only way we could succeed. And we're not there yet at all. Like we have a small number of people who are quite excited about it and use it a lot and tell people about it, but it's not like the mythical product market fit that I've seen in movies and heard about. But we're working on it.
Yeah, that's so cool. So do you spend more time at the moment on getting people to try it, or do you spend more time on like making people want to like share it and or like how do you think about getting Vals to go viral?
Yeah, there are like so many different directions. So one is like people who love Val Town, like how do we get them to tell their friends about it and write blog posts about it and just like be evangelists? Like how do we get them to make cool Vals that have a chance of going viral, get them to share those Vals? Like how do we get like the pro users to really love it? And so that involves things that aren't really growth activities. Like people want Vim key bindings, and so we added Vim key bindings, which like is not a growth activity, but like people are tweeting about how like our Vim key bindings are like so exciting, and like that's a growth thing, you know? So like I guess, you know, whatever, I'm not inventing product-led growth, but like building a product that people love and love to talk about is like at the heart of the strategy. But then, of course, like when you share a Val, it needs to be share worthy. Like, how does the sharer image look? How, like when you land on a Val, is it explainable where you are, what it is? Are like all those little, is the SEO for the page good? Like there are all these little details that you have to get right. A huge one is embedded Vals. Like we've been kind of limping along. Like you can embed a Val. It doesn't look great, doesn't load fast. But I think like one way that we totally win is if people showing off node libraries or API companies wanting to show off how to use their API, if they're embedding us in their documentation, or people writing blog posts explaining JavaScript concepts, or like beginner classes are using Val Town to teach beginner JavaScript. That's also a huge way we could win. But that's just like a different lens on like Val Town that we haven't really put enough polish into that we need to. It's another area of growth. So a new thing we've been doing is every Thursday, the team is not allowed to work on Val Town, the product. We all have to try and make Vals to go viral, which is like a really fun, creative day. It's in some ways it's like the hardest day of the week. In some days it's the most fun day of the week, but it's also hard because it's like I don't know if you ever put on like the viral cap of like, how do I make this go viral? Or like, what's something that's intrinsically interesting to me and would be interesting to other programmers and could be built in Val Town in like a day. It's harder than like just adding a button that a user wants to our product. Sometimes it's easier to like polish a product than it is to use the product in a creative way. So
yeah, have you got better at that? Is there any like things that you've picked up? Like, okay,
we haven't had a Val go viral really in a while. So we're not doing well in terms of making Vals go viral. The last one that went viral is that like Hacker News Follow one, which we branded not as a Val, we branded it as like an installable script. And so we keep experimenting and exploring this tension between a Val, which is like a script, which is usable, which isn't really like picking up. Like people aren't like that excited about Vals at the moment for some reason. But when we branded it as like a script with like an install button, so all we did was change the change the fork button to an install button. The behavior is the same. We just like changed the button, the call to action to install. It did really well. So we probably need to experiment more with apps. So that's like definitely one angle that we haven't explored that well. That like we haven't explored that enough. Like I would like Vals to go viral on their own, but if people want apps, I guess we can give the people apps.
That's interesting. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you about as well is like, there's some stuff you do that is like, you know, I speak to a lot of dev tools, play around with a lot of dev tools, and like largely a lot of things are familiar. There's like new things applied in different ways and solving different problems. But like when I tried out Val Town the first time, and you may have changed this, but when I created my account, it was like a completely new experience where it was like I was just coding and signing up at the same. It was like the login process or the account creation process was like in the code, where I was like,
yeah, we did change this actually. We brought back elements of that in onboarding, but yeah. So when you first started with Val Town, like everything you'd want to do, like any setting you'd want to set, would be like a JavaScript command in the code editor. So like setting your handle was like a command, like set handle, and then you give it a string, and it would set your handle or throw an error, and you can change your handle. You could,
it was really cool though. It was so memorable, and I think I'm sure I tweeted about it. If I didn't, I'd almost I thought about tweeting about it. And like, why did you get rid of it? Not saying you should bring it back. I'm curious about.
Yeah. You're making me think you're like bringing it back. It well, if we brought it back, we'd bring it back in like probably a faked way. Like it wouldn't. Basically, the issue was there were too many degrees of freedom, and users just had errors signing up, and like that's just not what the bottleneck we want to be happening. Like we want the sign. Yeah, ultimately, like there were too many degrees of freedom. Like a sign up flow is a really specific kind of thing. And like having to teach people JavaScript as they're signing up to your product is like not the place to do it. Like you want to like get them into your product and they're signed up, they have an account, you have their email address, and now let's teach you the product while having you continue to set up your account. So like one of the ones that I'm excited about is so we here, let me go to the tutorial and pull up the exact thing. So step 1 in the tutorial is to create an API. That's not very meta. Step 3 in the tutorial is console.email. We teach you how to send yourself an email. And the email we have you send is your own welcome email to Val Town. It's like, hi, welcome to Val Town. Like, here are some tips. And you can like click in and see like the HTML for that email is just another Val. And then we do it again. We do the trick again on the next step, the 4th step of the tutorial. We show you how to schedule a function. And so we have you schedule your own drip marketing campaign. So we have you like console.email, send yourself like inspiration emails about like things you can do in Val Town, and we have you schedule it to send it yourself an email every day, and it's all customizable. You can have it send yourself an email every hour, every year, never again. Just a little meta joke about what we'd like you to do, and we're going even further in this direction, but in less like cute cutesy ways. Like that one, like most people I think will like unschedule right away because they're, like, I don't want this nonsense. But ones we're really excited about that we're launching in a couple weeks is like anytime someone likes your Val, anytime someone references your Val, anytime your Val throws an error, anytime your Val is like hit via API for the first time, anytime your Val has like a spike in traffic, like there are all these times you do want to get notified. And so, but like everyone wants notifications slightly differently. And so we could build like a really robust notification system that tries to get at most of these things, or we could build none of those things into the product and instead expose APIs to get at that data, and then let you build poll jobs to like run queries on our API to like detect your Val through an error, your Val had new traffic, your Val was liked, your Val was referenced, and then send you emails based on those things. And so the idea is to like have a marketplace of notification Vals that, well, the marketplace is free, but like a marketplace of ideas of Vals that like people, sure, I want to get notified when my Val errors, but like I want an exponential back off to that. Like I don't want to be notified every second if it's erroring every second. I want like to be notified the first time, and then maybe every hour, and then every day, and then every week, and those fade off into the sunset. And so like the Val Town is perfect for this kind of like programmatic customization of notification emails. And so that like installing those into your account will be part of the tutorial. Like, hey, like we think you want these 6 notification things, like by default, like just press here to install them all. You can customize them later arbitrarily. It's code.
That's very cool. So that's like an actual useful, like what people would consider like really useful. And they can see how that works. That's very cool. Yeah. In general, like how do you think about like, I know you're passionate about education, and it feels like that's kind of a big challenge because there's lots of new stuff with Val, and I don't know, like because you're reaching so many people, a lot of people will, I guess, be like new to development maybe as well. And how do you think about that?
Yeah. My like medium term ambition is that someone will decide to build a learn to code interactive course on top of Val Town. Like the long-term ambition is that there are hundreds or thousands of learn to code courses on Val Town where like maybe the course has embedded Vals that students can edit or interact with, or it links out to Val Town, or just recommends Val Town as the place to write their JavaScript. I think that'd be awesome. I guess in the real long term, I could imagine like somehow embedded in our product, like a whole course embedded in our product that we made, that we kind of bless as like, here's a good way to learn JavaScript. But ultimately, I think it'd be better if we give people the building blocks to build educational tools with Val Town, and we let other people write the actual content. We're just the evaluation engine. I had someone reach out and ask like, hey, like I'd like to build a course with Val Town and use it as the evaluation engine, and we can like split the profits. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like you take all the profits from your course. Like you're just advertising my platform. Like this is what I want. Like, I don't need any, like you're giving me, like you're turning all of your students into Val Town users, which will like maybe a long time from now, like some of them will convert into customers. Like I like to think about how long it took GitHub to make money on me. Like I became a GitHub user at 18 as a freshman in college. And I think the first, I went to work at companies that were also using GitHub. I didn't bring GitHub there, but I guess the company paid for my GitHub account. So I guess that's one way GitHub made money off of me. But really, like, I don't know if you could count that. Like the first time I gave GitHub money was GitHub sponsors, actually, which is hilarious. And now I have a company. And so I started paying for GitHub, and then GitHub Actions increases. And now I'm paying GitHub still very small dollars, but like I'm paying GitHub plenty of money, plenty. And, if the company scales, I'll keep paying to GitHub. And Val Town will be the same kind of company. Like I would love you to create your Val Town account when you're 14 years old. And like for the first dollar we get from you to be when you're like 27, when you start your company. Like, holy crap, that is a 13-year payback period. But I think like that's the kind of company I think Val Town is. And I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. we've not released it yet, but I did an interview with Brian Doogie, who was really early at GitHub, and I think he, and also at Netlify, and I think they had a lot of success with like working with boot camps and like do like literally just going there and helping doing workshops and showing that you can run code with Netlify, I think was, and I think they did a similar with GitHub as well.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I wonder if I should do workshops. I've thought about it, like go to hackathons, go to boot camps, do workshops. Yeah, I should. Maybe I should tweet about it and see if I could get some invites. That's my style.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this how you got this. Well, we already knew each other, but I don't know why we'd not done the podcast. But one thing I wanted to ask as well is like you founded Future of Coding, right? It was is a podcast, big community. I just found out there's one in London. I actually didn't know that.
Do you live in London?
Yeah, I live in London.
Wow.
I know you used to live in London, right?
Yeah, I had nothing to do with, or like virtually nothing to do with the London Future of Coding meetup. Maggie Appleton runs it, and I hear like the best things. Like I have it every month, and it's like so well attended. They always have a waiting list. Yeah, I would love to visit London and go one day.
Yeah, but it's kind of wild that you founded this thing that lives on beyond you, which is really amazing. Yeah. I wondered like if that whole experience, if it gave you any like I don't know, things that you learned that you kind of use with Val Town.
Yeah, well, it is wild that it lives on without me. Sometimes I'll go to Future of Coding meetups and people won't know who I am, and I think that's lovely. One of the things that it's funny for me to manage a community. I find often the people who start and manage communities are like weird people, and like in various ways. And like one of the things that's weird about me is I'm not that social of a person, and I'm not the sort of person who would hang out in a community. But I've like started a lot of things. I've started a lot of communities that I run. So I'm like, I find myself in the role of like, I'm a person who runs a community, but not really someone who's part of communities. So I don't have the best intuitions for like how to run communities or like, but I like whatever, I figured it out both times. Like I guess the thing you learn pretty quickly, like that you can't please everyone. It's like it's a hard lesson, but like, I remember like basically every day or every week in the Future of Coding, people would bring up like, can we move from Slack to Discord? Can we move from Slack to whatever, some other tool? Or can we like have a different style of communication? And like we'd run polls and it would just be like totally split. Like we literally can't please everyone. Like we just like someone has to make a decision, and I guess it's me. And then like everyone else has to be like upset for forever. Like that was a hard thing for me to come to terms with, but I'm more at peace with that now. Like a big community thing that is contentious is like, are you a chat style or are you a thread style culture? And so like one thing we have that I'm a big threads person. Like I like, if I could, I would like infinitely nestable threads, like kind of like Hacker News or Reddit. My dream, and one day someone will come up with it, is something that feels like a chat interface, like real time and like really all you need is notifications. And I guess real timeness and like typing indicators. I want like real timeness, typing indicators, notifications like Discord and Slack, but infinitely nestable replies like Hacker News and Reddit. I guess I'm kind of describing Twitter. And there is an alternate universe where Twitter or something like Twitter would be excellent for communities. Like they tried it with Spaces. It just like didn't quite work. So anyways, I think there is an opportunity there. I know that's what I want. I've tried to make it in Discord. Like we have this auto threader bot. Like whenever you make a thread in our general channel, it like auto turns it into, whenever you make a message, it auto turns it into a thread. And then like people can reply in the thread to like encourage people to not just like reply at the top line and like message everybody. We try and keep things organized in conversations, which I think is great. I'd like the infinite reply, but whatever. I think it's fine to just have the one level nested. Anyways, now I'm getting to the minutia of managing a Discord.
Yeah. Is it available in Val Town, the auto threading?
That's a project we want to build. I forget why. I think maybe because we don't support like long-lived WebSocket connections. There might be an issue with what, like, if you want it to happen immediately, I don't know if a combination of Discord doesn't support the right things and Val Town doesn't support the right things for that to happen, unless you have the Val running like every second, which we don't really support. We will soon. Val's running every second. Right now, some Vals, I allow some of my Vals like to run every second, but that's not like what we want. Right now, the minimum is once every minute, even if you're on the pro plan. One day will allow you to run Vals even more than once a second, once a millisecond if you want, whatever. Scalability, we'll get there. But one Val Town bot that we have that's really fun is as soon as you join the Discord, you'll get a DM from a Val Town Slack bot, Val Town Discord bot. That's like, welcome to the Val Town Discord. Here's a couple of tips. I was made on Val Town. View my source code here. You can click, and it'll take you
that's cool.
to its own source code. So that's fun. We try, as you get the sense of, to like use Val Town, to welcome you to Val Town, to show you how to use Val Town as much as possible.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. One very rogue question that may or may not make it into the final edit. Have you started this date me thing on Twitter? Could you, or is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to be like very popular.
Yeah. Happy to talk about Date Me Docs. I would say I did not start Date Me Docs, but I think I'm the world leading advocate for Date Me Docs. Whenever people write about them, that recently the New York Times interviewed me about them, I'm like right at the top of the list of people to interview because I have the database of all the docs. I saw people sharing these Date Me Docs. I made one. I've gone on some dates from Date Me Docs. I've like messaged women. They've messaged me. So a Date Me Doc is a public website. That's an earnest long form dating profile. So it's like a Google Doc that you just made public, or a Notion doc in my case that I've made public. And it just describes who I am and what I'm looking for in a relationship. And I saw people sharing these across the internet. And I figured that they should be centralized somewhere. So I made a Notion database and put them all in and slapped a form on it. And now the URL is dateme.directory. I've made a bunch of vows actually about Date Me Docs. So like I made a vow to turn the Date Me Doc database into an RSS feed, so you can subscribe to updates. You can also fork my vow. I have another vow that you can fork that will just send you a console.email notification whenever there's a new Date Me Doc entry. But like you don't want a Date Me Doc notification whenever there's any new Date Me. Like I want to get notification for every new Date Me Doc because I think they're fun to read. But like if you want to filter by age, location, anything, just like I give you a couple of demos of how to do that in code because Val Town's a programming platform. So Date Me Doc, so that's basically Date Me Docs. The recent, maybe why you saw it in your feed recently, is that the new drama is that this New York Times article is happening, it seems. We still don't have a publication date, but there's a schism in the Date Me Doc community where some people, like me, want as many eyeballs on their Date Me Doc as possible because like they're looking for a unique snowflake and they want like as many they want as many like at-bats as possible. Like they want everyone to see their Date Me Doc so that they can like recommend it to people who might be good for them. On the other hand, there are some people who are, it's like a little bit too sensitive. Like they don't want like quite that much attention on their Date Me Doc. And so I've had about a dozen people email me in the last day asking me to remove their doc from the directory because they don't want like New York Times level scrutiny on their docs, which totally understandable. I would like to believe like if I'm going to get on my high horse and talk about like the future of dating, I would like to believe that it's a great thing, a great exercise to go through to like write a Date Me Doc and like really get clear in words about who you are and what you're looking for. In the same way, I feel like it's like a resume. Like imagine if resumes didn't exist and like I started and I made like a long doc about like who I am, what work experience I've had, what kind of work experience I would like. And I started sharing around this like work doc, this like work with me doc. It would like, I could see it like taking off as a little movement. Like most people wouldn't do it. Some people would, some people would be like sensitive and shy about it. But like ultimately, resume is one. Like it's a good protocol to have these documents that are like portable and shareable and explain you. And I think the same should be true about dating. It shouldn't be like owned and centralized and like walled private garden like dating apps. It should be like an open protocol that we all maintain and share and whatnot. So that's my side project.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and obviously like all of the tech that needs to power these like Dame docs should be built in Val Town, right?
Yeah. I guess in theory I could move more and more of it over to Val Town. Like right now it's like a Notion. Yeah, it's like a Notion website, but in theory, it should be a Val Town website. Even like the domain. Like we don't even have custom domains on Val Town. Like, we'll give you a subdomain. Like it could be like Steve Krouse --dateme directory.val.run, but like true like domain forwarding kind of thing. Nobody's asked for that yet. I'm excited for someone to ask for that because I think it'll be, we definitely need that feature soonish. So I'm excited to build that one day.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, Steve, I think that's all we've got time for. But yeah, thanks so much for joining. And if anyone's listening, interested, val.town, go check it out. And Steve Krouse on Twitter, right?
Yes.
Thanks for joining, Steve.
Thanks for the chat.
Thanks everyone for listening.